Avoiding deathbed regrets.
Yes.
Everyone thinks about it. Everyone knows what I'm talking about. But how do we act on it?
Yeah, regret-free living, right? We talk a lot about longevity, anti-aging tips, but the reality is that we are all headed to the same place one way or another, even if we prolong the experience. At some point in time, a part of the living experience is dying. And so this information comes from palliative care nurse, she's Australian, Ware, and she wrote a book called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. And it's been translated into 32 languages. It's been read by millions of people, bestseller, because we hear a lot of advice about how to live our lives. But it's very different when people who are in the last 12 weeks of their lives say, listen to me very carefully. This is what I regret the most about my living experience. So Bronnie Ware took the experience and the conversations that she had working as a nurse, having these conversations about regrets, these deeply soulful conversations where people were full of anguish, and making her promise that she would share this information with other people so that they could live better. All right. So I have the top 5 here, and I'd like to count down if it's okay. And I'd also love to invite everyone at home to actually make notes of this, because at the end, I'm going to, as a coach, I'm going to invite you to take some action in your lives instead of just absorbing this information, actually using it to make your life better. Okay.
I'm all ears.
All right. So
Let's
the
roll.
5th one, starting at the 5th, I wish I had let myself be happier. So Bronnie Ware said that above all, people were talking about how they realized happiness is a choice. So being able to tune out the circumstances of what's happening and actually choose happiness, choose to be silly, to laugh, to play, to have higher vibrations, better vibrations in life was so important. People realized that a lot of what they made important and the mediocrity that they got used to, familiar with, actually didn't matter in the end. They realized I could have chosen to be happy in so many moments where I let the external circumstances influence how I felt. So make the choice to be happier.
Yep, the Beach Boys wrote a song, Good Vibrations.
Good vibrations,
Right.
exactly.
Okay.
Choose more good vibrations in your life. Number 4, I wish I had stayed in touch with my friends. So Bronnie said that when youth and health had faded, that what people realized is that their income, their achievements amounted to absolutely nothing. And in the end, people wanted to connect with the people that were important to them. And a lot of them talked about how they let friendships that were really important just drift away because they were too occupied with other aspects of life. And in the end, that's really what mattered the most. We've talked a lot about how humans are belonging creatures. We need to connect with one another. It's arguably one of the most important needs, because without it, when people are lonely, the babies will die. We were designed to rely upon each other and to connect to each other, and there's a loneliness epidemic. So number 4, I wish I had stayed in touch with my friends, is a call for us to take action where we are letting connections sort of slip. Stephen Levine says, if you knew that you were going to die soon and you only had one phone call to make, who would you call? And what would you say? And why are you waiting? So,
That is an excellent but tough question.
Yes, absolutely. The people in your life are what matter most, so invest in them and invest often. Number 3, I wish I'd had the courage to express my feelings. And so a lot of this was about not saying I love you enough. That was a big, big theme, is that I wish I had said I love you more to the people that I actually loved. And then another part of it was not confronting people when there was something bothering them, right? So sometimes we try, in order to make peace and to maintain peace, we don't say what's on our hearts. And what the people on their deathbed said is, I wish I had the uncomfortable conversations. Because in reality, whenever you have them with kindness and in the spirit of staying connected, it can actually enrich your relationships. We've talked about this certainly with couples, but in friendships as well, when you're able to have the conversations that feel a little bit uncomfortable and make it to the other side and stay connected, there is a fortification process that happens in that. So say I love you often, and when there is something between you and someone that you care about and it's something that bothers you, don't keep it to yourself to make the peace. Invite the person to a conversation so that you can clear that between the two of you.
I've known friends that have been married for years that said, we just found out something new about each other because we never talked about it.
Exactly.
And they go, why you waited 20 years to tell me?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then so just know that at the end of it all of those unexpressed feelings surface and they become regret. So if people are important to you, especially people that, your parents and people that you know that are not going to be there for the rest of your life, like say the things that you need to say and say them right away. 2 is something that all of Bronnie Ware's male patients expressed, and that is, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. And this is a tough one because we all need to work in order to survive, right? And if you love your job, which a lot of people do, and you're passionate about it, then you invest more time. But what Bronnie Ware was saying is that what they realize in the end is that no one says, I wish I had worked harder, right? What they wish is that they realized that life and what makes you happy is simplicity oftentimes. And so a lot of people are working toward a lifestyle that is bigger or grander or better, right? Or they're investing more in order to have more advantages in life. And in the end, they want to do away with all of that and just go back to those connections, right? So this is especially true for someone who is passionate about their work. I know that I have been a workaholic a lot in my life. I love to work, right? But what can happen is that you edge out what we were talking about, those connections with your people, right? You miss out on chunks of your children's lives. You let friendships kind of dwindle. Your primary relationship starts to suffer because of work. So what Bronnie Ware was suggesting is that you edit your lifestyle, right? Like find out what you can let go of, simplify, and what's a priority to you so that you can spend a primary amount of your energy investing into what's truly important. And also working and hopefully loving your work, but also choosing work that actually fulfills you and brings life to you. There was a man in the book called John, and John says, don't create a life where you're working too hard. Even though I didn't know I was going to regret it, deep in my heart, I knew I was working too hard. So the invitation then if you're watching from home, is you get that little intuitive hit, right? We do. It's like in the background. We're working a little bit too hard. It's time to disconnect. Don't ignore that. Because like John said, he didn't know it was going to become a regret, but there was that still small voice in the background saying, disconnect, stop working, don't work as hard. Okay?
I'll listen to that one.
Yes.
All right.
Yes. And number one,
Right.
and we talked about this before, I wish I'd had the courage to live a life that was true to myself and not the life that others expected of me. This was the number one regret of everyone. And this goes back to belonging instead of fitting in. It is very easy as social creatures to step into the expectations of others, to do things that are expected of the family. Let's say, everyone's a doctor, so you're going to be a doctor, even though your heart says you want to be a painter. And there's one patient named Grace, and this is a quote from Grace. I mean it. Promise this dying woman that you will always be true to yourself, that you will be brave enough to live the life you want to, regardless of what other people might say. And Grace was actually a woman who stayed in a very unhappy marriage until he went into a nursing home. And shortly after he went into a nursing home, she was diagnosed with terminal illness that was extremely aggressive. And so all of the dreams that she sort of put on the side that she thought one day she'd be able to live out, they were lost. And so Bronnie Ware said she in particular was very, very adamant about making sure that people understood. Live your life according to your own heart. Be yourself. Do what you want to do, because over half of the dreams that people said that they hadn't even approached, not even tried, because of the outside-in expectations they were living into, the commitments they had already made, the sunk cost fallacy, right? This idea that I've already invested all this time and energy, I got to keep staying the course. Grace and Bronnie Ware says no. Now is the time to actually follow your heart and don't worry about what other people say about it. Just live your life.
I know a person, man from Houma, that was a genius, went to MIT, finished top of his class.
Yeah.
He became a professional baseball umpire. That's what he wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I never forget, I told my mom and dad all through my senior year, I'm going to be a doctor. They were all excited. Till at the end, I said, no, I want to be a journalist.
Yeah.
And they said, go for it.
Yeah.
So the parents have a lot to do
Huge.
with the child being happy when they say, I want to be this.
huge. It's so huge. So if you have a child at home, remembering that these are independent, sovereign beings that come here with their own blueprint. And so while we may want the best for them, and in our own minds, the best may be being a doctor or something that makes a lot of money, it's important to really listen into what they are saying they're being guided to and support them in that, because otherwise they may end up at some point in time having deathbed regrets that are deep. So,
Yeah, all my friends were going into medicine. I figured, I'm going to go into medicine.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I kept being, because I always had these film cameras in my hand. And I said, it's not what I love to do.
Exactly.
So they could have gave me grief, but they did not. So thanks, Mom. Thanks, Dad. It all worked out.
Yes, be supportive of your people when they're going off the beaten path. It's a very courageous journey to do that in a lot of cases. I mean, you're lucky enough to have support all the way around. A lot of people don't, and they get a lot of negative feedback from their communities. That makes it very, very difficult. So we have the list of the 5, and so what I'm going to invite you at home to do is to create 3 actions out of this. Where are you inspired to actually make changes in your own life? Choose 3 things, write them down, and then star next to the one that you're going to do this week, because we don't want to delay. That's what keeps people going. Procrastination is actually like a sympathetic response. It's a freeze mode, right? So it's not a lot about laziness or lack of motivation. It's actually a perception of threat, and you're kind of keeping yourself in hibernation mode. So the way out of that, we talked about the motivation cycle, is just to take small action. One small action, you can do it very slowly, but once you start taking action, tell yourself you're doing a good job, and then just keep going.